Keep Our Republic is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Since the spring of 2020, we've been doing our part to help keep our republic. We do it through hyper-localized civic education. We talk with Americans through town halls, through legal seminars, media briefings, and other events. We know a lot of Americans have a lot of questions about how our elections work, what safeguards are in place, and who actually is working behind the scenes on election night as the votes are being tabulated. And that's why we're really glad you're joining us today. Hopefully, we can answer some of those questions. Welcome, folks. I'm so glad to have with us today Lisa Tollefson joining us from Wisconsin. Keep Our Republic is excited to bring you this discussion. And Lisa, I'm just going to give you the floor to share a little about yourself, and also why don't we just scene set a little about your part of Wisconsin.
So my name's Lisa Tollefson. I am the Rock County clerk. I grew up on a dairy farm in central Wisconsin, so I'm definitely a cheesehead. I got into being a county clerk, but I started as a town clerk. We had a GM plant that closed here. I needed to find another way to make money. There was an ad in the local Milton Courier to get a town clerk, and I applied. I got it, became a town clerk. And then 6 years later, our county clerk decided to move on to something else. Actually, she became a city clerk. I applied and I was appointed, and I love it. I love what I do. I love the work I do. I feel like I make a difference, usually from behind the scenes, but election officials have become more prominent in the news lately in the last few years. So that's where I started.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about that last point, and we're also going to talk a little about the difference between a county clerk and a municipal clerk in Wisconsin. But give folks, so you mentioned Milton. What are some other communities for those who might not know Rock County?
They might not. So we actually, my county seat is Janesville. We border the state of Illinois. So Dane County with Madison is to the north and Rockford, Illinois is to the south. I call us the gateway to Wisconsin, since I-39 comes straight up through us.
And how many registered voters do you have in the county?
It varies. Roughly 80 to 90,000. Our population in the county is 165,000. We have 5 cities and 20 towns and 3 villages.
And a whole lot of farmland in between.
A whole lot of beautiful farmland.
It's primarily dairy cattle, or what are folks growing?
It's all different things. There's dairy. There's lots of cash crops. We have someone that grows peppermint here. There's all different things here. We have some of the most amazing soils in the country, in our county.
Well, I'm a big fan of peppermint tea. I never really knew where it came from, but good deal. So at what point, I mean, you kind of alluded to this, was it a light bulb moment, or at what point did you say, you know what, I want to go into county government and election administration for that matter? So,
Well, I love working with elections. As a town clerk in Wisconsin, the town clerks actually run the elections. So let me explain. Municipal clerks run the elections. So those are your town clerks, your village clerks, and your city clerks. We put them all under the label of municipal clerks. They actually run the elections, and that's what I was doing at the municipal level as a town clerk. I needed a new challenge, and I knew I was going to move up to either a bigger municipality, but then the county came open, and it's like, yes, I want to try that. I want a new challenge. So that's when I jumped into that.
well, let's be honest. There's too few Americans even contemplate a career in public service and election administration at that, and that's part of why we're hosting this show with Keep Our Republic. But so why it certainly has been a challenge, and we'll get to how the profession and particularly in Wisconsin, it's been somewhat challenging, but also I imagine somewhat rewarding over the years. But why this versus department of fill in the blank in local government?
Any clerk, municipal or county clerk, has so many different things that they touch and that they do that you're never bored. You have a new challenge every day. You're never going to know what your question is that you're going to get. I remember one day getting a question. They asked, can I bury a horse in my backyard? You never, ever know what you're going to have to figure out or take care of. It's
I'm
a like
sorry
a
to interject, but I think the audience would be curious. What is the answer in your county? Are you allowed to
it
bury a
depends
horse?
if you're near a waterway.
Oh, okay. That's a good
Um,
answer. All right.
call the health department. They'll give you the correct answer for your area. So,
Is there actually something in Wisconsin code that, or is it federal code about interstate waterways, or how deep the
there's
carcass?
there are so many different rules with waterways. Um, we have a huge Department of Natural Resources in our state that takes care of all kinds of things with that. So I'm not going to give you details, but I can tell you call the health department and
Okay,
they'll
well,
get you the right answer.
we're a show that's talking about election administration. As curious as I am about that morbid topic of dead four-legged friends, um, you've alluded to this, and I think all Americans, certainly all Wisconsin residents, have really gotten a taste of. This is a heated topic when people start talking about how Wisconsin administers elections. It seems like every 4 years in the presidential race, but certainly in other statewide contests, Wisconsin is as purple, to use the colloquial term, as can be. It's really just a sliver that often decides the victor. Um, so what? Just big picture. Why do you think your state just perpetually is so purple?
Um, big reason is that people here are more likely to vote for a candidate than a party. When we register to vote, we don't register by party. So a lot of states, you have to check a box in what party you are. In Wisconsin, we don't collect that data. We don't use that data. You can. There's no spot that you mark that says what you are. And when we go into our partisan primaries or we go to the ballots in November, you can't do a straight party ticket in November. You can't just check one box and vote for all the Republicans or all the Democrats. You have to pick candidates. In your partisan primary, which we have in August to narrow down the candidates that go to our November ballots, in those, if you have to pick a party and vote for that party, those candidates in that party, it's all on one ballot. You don't have to ask them for the ballot you want. They're all on one ballot. So you don't know your voter. Someone could vote one way one time and one another. Again, I think it's they're voting for who they think the best person is, not by the party.
And I think most audience members know, but every state obviously is doing things quite differently when they're hosting a primary. Are these closed primaries or open to independents?
Hmm.
When the polls open, if there's early voting, we're going to hear certainly with this episode and future episodes just how unique Wisconsin does things. Um, as I alluded to, not to dwell on a negative, Wisconsin's had a lot of litigation. That's had a lot litigated in the court of public opinion about election administration. You know a thing or two about this. You're quite involved in the Wisconsin County Clerks Association. You've traveled outside of Rock County. So um, let's talk about some of this disinformation. Once again, don't want to dwell on a negative, but what over recent years have you been hearing a lot of questions about?
Oh, there's so many. Let me see where to start. When I first started, people kept telling me that we don't count the absentee ballots. Yes, we do. We count them on election day. We can't start counting any ballots until 7 a.m. on election day. We do not do, if you vote in person before the election or send in your absentee ballot, we do not open those till 7 a.m. on election day, which is why sometimes our results can come in fairly late in the night because it takes time. It's not ballot dumps at the end of the night, which is one of the things you'll hear. If you have,
And it would take an act of the legislature to change that. And I
it
think
would.
most audience members are familiar with Florida, very very large state, and they're able to figure this out much quicker most election nights. But it's because they can begin counting and tabulating these earlier. Okay, so that's a common recurring theme.
That is very common. People go to bed at 10 o'clock at night thinking they have all the results, and the large counties that have a lot more absentee ballots are still working on those. It doesn't mean that they found some ballots. They started at 7 in the morning and they have to wait until they're done to pull all the results at once. They can't do partial loads to the state websites or to the county websites. They have to wait till they're completely done and then they can load them. And it takes time. And we want all those poll workers to take their time to be accurate and make sure they're checking everything.
Once again, really don't want to dwell on negatives, but part of our mission is just to combat this disinformation. And I think in the age of social media, and also just using media like this podcast and YouTube, there's a lot of myths that are percolating. So what are some other common but easily refutable myths?
People keep saying that we're connected to the internet, and we are not. I have a standalone system. I remember one time having a conversation with a reporter from Texas, and he was thinking, it took me a while to figure out why he thought everything was done on one single computer. He thought I only had one computer in my office, and I have 10. I have two that I can use that connect to the internet, do my email and all that. The rest are standalone systems that are used just for elections. They are not connected to any of our networks in the county. They are standalone, they work together, and they're offline. And that's a big piece that people should know, because everybody thinks that every computer is connected to the internet. Your phone's connected, all those others. Our system's not. That election system is standalone.
And you, as you alluded to, have been doing this incredible work in the trenches of election administration in southern Wisconsin for several years now. Have these themes and this kind of broader climate of misinformation, has it moved one way or the other? Has it become more fast and furious?
I think that the majority of the public, because we've talked so much about it, are actually becoming more comfortable with the information, and they understand it. There's always a group that no matter what you told them, they're never going to believe you. And I don't think we're going to change those people's minds. But I believe the majority of the public has learned a lot more about elections, and they understand them better. And I think that a lot of the work that Keep Our Republic has done and that I've done with them has actually helped to get that information out also.
I appreciate you saying that. The two of us have certainly put on some road miles, and your state's a little bit larger than other states. So thank you. And I think it's also an important takeaway to hear that every county, every municipality does things slightly differently. You want to give some examples of that? For example, what machines you're using, and adjacent counties might be using different machines, and some
Right.
other tricks of the trade that Rock County is doing that others might not be.
So, for example, in Wisconsin, the municipality actually can choose their own equipment. They don't have to use the same equipment as anyone else in their county. But it's a whole lot easier because the county clerk has to provide the ballots to everyone, that they're all in the same system within the county. So we have 72 counties in Wisconsin, and each of those counties has decided what equipment they're going to use. We actually can choose from 4 different vendors in our state. One just got certified, but we can use 3 different vendors right now that have been certified. They go through the federal certification. They go through an certification at the state level before we can even purchase them. So what we do at Rock County that's a little different than other counties is that we actually have what's called central count at 2 of our 2 of our cities. So in Wisconsin, the absentee ballots are processed at the polling locations with all the ballots on election day, unless you have what's called a central count location. So City of Janesville and City of Beloit have central count. All the absentees for the entire city of Janesville go to City of Janesville, usually it's City Hall, unless they rented a gym like they did in 2020. City of Beloit went to City Hall, and that's where they do theirs. That means that those polling locations at those cities, they don't have to deal with multitasking, and they can concentrate on just helping the voters get through. And they have the larger populations in our counties. So because that central count, we have our election results will come in phases. So usually the polling locations can shut down first and get us the data, and then the central counts come in after. So we have to warn people, and we have it on our night, on election night. We warn all the media. We put notices that unless we've checked our check boxes for these municipalities, they are not complete. You are still waiting on ballots that are still need to come in, and usually it's the absentees. So that's a little bit different. You hear about that from Milwaukee. Milwaukee does that too for the city, and there's roughly 30 to 40 municipalities that are larger that do that in our state. So it's slightly different. But that's a big difference from other states where most states can count those absentees ahead of time. We don't. And the other thing is that different in our state is that absentee ballots must be returned by 8 p.m. on election night. We don't care if it's postmarked election day. If we don't have it in our hands by 8 p.m. on election night, it's not counted. So that's another piece that was people were saying they weren't postmarked and they were still getting counted. And it's like, doesn't matter on the postmark in Wisconsin. If
Let's
we don't
talk a
have
bit
it, it doesn't get counted.
I just want to talk a bit about mail ballots. I mean, I think if memory serves me, in 2024, more Americans voted by mail than ever before in history. And I don't know if that's a high watermark or if this is a trend line that's going to continue. So in your county, how many mail ballot requests and then ultimately how many mail ballots would you say came in? Percentage wise of those total voters you mentioned at the beginning?
So I can tell you in 2020, before 2020, it was about 25% of our ballots were absentee. In 2020, our county had 62% of the people voted absentee. It's not gone back to 25%. I would say it's about 30 to 40, depending on the election. I see it as a trend. People found how easy it was to absentee vote, not having to worry about, if they can get off work, what's the weather going to be? Are we going to be in a blizzard? We never know. It's Wisconsin. We've had tornadoes in February here, so you never know. I think that trend to keep absentee voting because it's easy and they don't have to worry about it, I see that is continuing. I don't know if it'll ever get back to that 62%, but I don't think it's ever going back down to 25.
Is that are you able to discern? You obviously have certain precincts and communities that lean more Republican, others that lean more Democrat. So is this a trend that seems to be in one party, or it's across the political spectrum across the county?
It tends to be in the larger population areas that tend to be more absentee ballots. When you're looking at the small towns that we have, the lower populations, people don't worry about having to wait in lines on election day. It's almost like you're going to Mayberry in some of those small towns where they have everybody knows everybody. They're asking about how the kids and showing off pictures of have you got your crops in? So it's a little bit different. There's not lines, so they don't tend to worry about having to wait on election day. So it does tend to be more of those bigger population areas, and definitely people that are having to travel to work. We have a lot of commuters that will work in Madison because we're the county just below that. So they will absentee because they don't know if they'll be back in time to vote before the end of the day or if something comes up. So like I said, most of it's more of that higher population areas that are absentee voting.
So you and your colleagues at the local level, I mean, these are dramatic numbers, and as you say, you don't know if this is going to continue to grow, but it certainly is a paradigm shift in recent
Yes.
years. So just mechanically, how have you been able to process this and train your colleagues with this really this new element, this new reality?
We've been introducing. I've been encouraging my municipalities to go to using e-poll books. Not all of them have them. They have to pay up front to get those if they want to use them. But it helps them process faster so they can handle more of those absentees. It gets the voters through the lines faster. Some of the municipalities have bought extra tabulators. They'll use one just for the in-person voting and one just for the absentees. And that way they're not backing up a line at the tabulator to put them into one. So they bought extra equipment to help handle that. They will do a lot of sorting ahead of time. We had a new upgrade to our envelopes last year, which are a whole lot easier for the voter to read and to follow the instructions. They're color coded, and that has actually cut down on the numbers that we have to reject or where we have to contact the voter if something's missing. And that's actually saved us time too. So that introduction to new envelopes helped, new equipment, and lots of training. One of the things we've started doing is we used to have a lot more people where the poll worker would work the entire day, and a lot of people can't work an entire day. A lot of our poll workers are not the average age of 20, so we have to take that into consideration. And a lot of them have started doing split shifts. So they'll work 4-hour shifts or they'll work half the day. And that seems to have brought on more people who are willing to help with election day. And it allows us to flex a little bit more to get our work done.
Is that something that's spelled out and permitted in Wisconsin election code, or every county just needs to find X number of poll workers and can allow certain?
So there is a number in state statute, but they can do a resolution that they can actually go down to 3 if they need it. It has to be in odd numbers. 3 is the lowest you can go. You have to have a check and balance. In state statute, they want at least 5. But I can tell you my first election as a town clerk, I had a whole 97 voters the entire day. I'm pretty sure I didn't need 5. 3 was plenty. So they allow us some flexibility, and they do allow you to use split shifts. Now, all of that is determined at municipal level. So with those towns, villages, and cities. I don't have any control over poll workers. I don't hire them. I help train them, though. I train a ton of poll workers. But I'm not the one who actually appoints them. I don't put them in place.
Just remind folks, polls open when, polls close when on election day.
So across the state, they open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. in Wisconsin.
It's like that in many states. That's a very, very long day. You had
is.
mentioned something earlier, Lisa. Some states refer to this as ballot curing. So if one of these thousands and thousands of county residents who've chosen to vote by mail makes some sort of error, but it's received, I don't know, on October 29th or something, if you could just speak to that process in your county and then elsewhere in Wisconsin that you're familiar with.
We have to look to make sure that the voter signed it, their witness signed it, their witness address. Those are the things that we're verifying on the ballot envelope to make sure. If we get a ballot in and something's missing, we try to reach out to the voter, but we also, if it's time and we can mail it back to them and get them to cure it, otherwise we try to reach out to them. We have a unique system in Wisconsin called My Vote, and you can actually track your absentee ballot on that system. If there's an issue with the ballot, we actually flag it on My Vote. And if you're tracking your ballot, it marks when we sent it, when we received it, anticipated date you would receive it. And when we get it back, we mark it whether it's received and if there's an issue. So they can actually track it there. And we have lots of people that like to help others make sure their ballots get counted, that pull those lists and will actually help reach out to those voters also to get those corrected. And they have until 8 p.m. on election day to get those envelopes corrected so they can get counted. If it's not done by 8 p.m. on election day, they don't get counted. They're not opened.
Well, you've been very generous with your time. As we're winding down, earlier you alluded that, if I heard you correctly, that a reporter from Texas had reached out. And we certainly know that Wisconsin, as I alluded to, it really is always kind of battleground. That's like as ground zero as it comes. If you can talk to some of the media inquiries and interest that you had in the lead up to November of 2024.
It seems like they're from everywhere. And one of the things that we did with Keep Our Republic, we did the ballots and battlegrounds in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was amazing. There were media everywhere. I don't even know how many interviews I did that day or how many questions we got from everyone, but that was a great resource to get everyone information out. I've had people from the Wall Street Journal, I can't even name all of them. Mainly they're Wisconsin. I do have every once in a while Illinois, news stations from all of the news stations across Wisconsin. And we also, because we're so close to Illinois, we do get Rockford stations that are coming up also. There's so many different people interested in elections, and Wisconsin's so unique, and we're so purple and I love to talk about elections. So I have lots of fun letting them know how it all works and all the different quirks that we have.
I've really enjoyed this. I'm sure our audience has too. The corollary to my question is not only has there been national media interest in how Wisconsin administers elections, but a lot of outside stakeholders. For example, Keep Our Republic, which has a Wisconsin presence and robust operation. But if you can also speak to in recent years, a lot of kind of third party actors, some of whom come with lots of preconceived notions, and others come, such as us, with very open mind.
Well, we've had lots of people ask lots of questions, and I take advantage of it and I try to explain as much as I can. There are times when I'll be in a big group and I can tell that someone has a question on it, and I will actually afterwards I will go and find them and try to get their answers to them. I've done a lot of Rotary, Kiwanis. There's lots of different groups I go to and talk about elections. I want to get that information out there, and I want to feel everyone to feel like I'm a resource to help them understand. Um, Sometimes they hear things on the news and they don't understand that it's from another state, or they're looking at social media and they'll see, oh my gosh, my ballot's not going to get counted. And it's like, no, that's a rule from a different state. You're in Wisconsin. You can register and vote on election day, but you need a photo ID. So I, a lot of it is just, we need to take care of that misinformation and clarify it and take that piece of that little nugget that wasn't quite correct and get it corrected so they understand why we have all those checks and balances in our system that we do.
Well, and this is exactly why we're having this conversation, and we're doing this show, is
Mhm.
to address exactly what you just said. The show is called "Keepers of the Republic" because we do believe that you and others in the trenches administering our elections are keeping our republic, as Ben Franklin envisioned. It requires an active citizenry who have trust in public servants like yourself. So, thank you very much. I'm not going to let you go until I ask you, with an eye to, as we're celebrating our 250th shortly as a nation, who is your favorite founding father?
Well, I think they all did an amazing piece to put everything together. But George Washington actually set the framework and the standards in place as to how he should be a president, like how many terms, and he set a lot of precedents that we still follow today.
You're here. And I don't know for certain, honestly, but I'm sure there's somewhere across the great state of Wisconsin called Washington. It seems like almost every state has a Washington municipality or Washington County, but
We have a Washington County.
I was 98% certain. So. All right, Lisa, thank you so much. But I know Rock County is better than Washington County. Really appreciate your time.
Well, we rock.
There we go. I like that. If you like this episode, please share it on social media and tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. I hope you'll agree that our guest is indeed a keeper of the Republic. If you want to learn more about how you can help keep our Republic, stop on over to our website, keepourrepublic.org. Thanks so much for joining us to learn more about the safeguards in running our nation's elections.